little better.
Hey. Come on, let's go. Yeah, let's go. All right, okay. Return to the Mac. Get up what it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit. Me get up, first shot, come strut walking. A little bit of humble, a little bit of cautious. Somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby's for the game. Nope, y'all can't copy yet. Glad moonwalking, and this here is our party. My posse's been on Broadway, and we did it all way. Chrome music, I shed my skin and put my bones into everything I record to it. And yeah, I'm on. Let that stage light go and shine on down. Got that Bob Barker suit game and Plinko in my style. Money, stay on my craft and stick around for those pounds. But I do that to pass the torch and put on for my town. Trust me, on my INDEPENDENT shit hustling. Chasing dreams since I was 14 with the 4-track bustin'. Halfway across that city with the back crush shit. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give that to the people, spread it across the country. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give it to the people, spread it across the country.
Here we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us. Here we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us.
Now, can I kick it? Thank you, yeah, I'm so damn grateful. I grew up really wanna go fronts, but that's what you get when Wu-Tang raised you. Y'all can't stop me, go hard like I got an 808 in my heartbeat. And I'm eating at the beat like it gave a little speed to a great white shark on shark week. Raw, time to go off, gone, deuces goodbye. I got a world to see, and my girl, she wanna see Rome. Caesar make you a believer, nah, I never ever did it for a throne. That validation comes from giving it back to the people. Now, sing this song and it goes like, raise those hands, this is our party. We came here to live life like nobody was watching. I got my city right behind me. If I fall, they got me. Learn from that failure, gain humility, and then we keep marching.
And we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us. We go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us.
So we put our hands up. So we put our hands up.
And all my people say, that's right. And all my people say, and all my people say,
Then we go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us. We go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us.
come on, let's go. Yeah, let's go. All right, okay. Return to the Mac. Get up what it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit. Me get up, first shot, come strut walking. A little bit of humble, a little bit of cautious. Somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby's for the game. Nope, y'all can't copy yet. Glad moonwalking, and this here is our party. My posse's been on Broadway, and we did it all way. Chrome music, I shed my skin and put my bones into everything I record to it. And yeah, I'm on. Let that stage light go and shine on down. Got that Bob Barker suit game and Plinko in my style. Money, stay on my craft and stick around for those pounds. But I do that to pass the torch and put on for my town. Trust me, on my INDEPENDENT shit hustling. Chasing dreams since I was 14 with the 4-track bustin'. Halfway across that city with the back crush shit. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give that to the people, spread it across the country. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give it to the people, spread it across the country.
Can we go back? This is the moment. Tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over.
Let's go! I know y'all feeling that. I know you're feeling that. I just want to give appreciation to everybody coming out. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification. Share, because I got a special guest for y'all guys, okay? I know a lot of people always talk about the passport bros and living the life and jumping overseas and all that good stuff. So we're going to have that conversation. So we're going to hit the super chat real quick. Every comment here, I read the super chat. So I appreciate everybody. So I'm going to read every comment. So I appreciate you, The Voice, stopping by to show some love. Appreciate you, Lady Navor. Exactly. Hit the likes. If you're coming in, hit the likes. If you're moving out, hit the likes. I appreciate it. Likes, thumbs up, thumbs down. Thank you. Appreciate you, Cool Gamer. Daryl Long, like always, throwing up the crowns up. Appreciate you. And yes, I am back, never left, always been networking, doing my thing. So we're going to have conversations about that later on during the show for our next conversation. So here it is. I would love to introduce a person that I've been following for since the pandemic started. He kept me very entertained with a lot of information. I don't know if he even remembers me doing this one time. We had a Zoom call, me and my buddies, before this certain country was fathomed from my mind. Me and buddies of ours was going to say, hey, let's go travel to Japan. We got the money ready, got the funds together, and the pandemic hit, right? So now it's like, all right, what am I gonna do with my life? You're stuck at home. Everybody's stealing tissues. Everybody's stealing toilet papers, sanitizers off the shelves. And I come across this younger brother where he was talking about the expat lifestyle. He was talking about the travelings. He's talking about the pros and cons. I took him as like a news anchor for that side of the spear. You know, he was reading news articles, the current events, everything that went on in this country, the ins and comings and goings. He even did a lot of documentary of himself, of a lot of good and the bad that came along with it. And I pretty much followed his content every since then. And like everything else, you go down a rabbit hole. So you feel like you know this person a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and welcome and introduce the one and only Mr. REEKAY. How we doing, sir?
Hey, doing good.
If you'd like to introduce yourself, man, tell you about the channel. They already heard me brag about you. If you just want to talk about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for the accolades. I guess the nutshell version is back in, I think it was about 2009. I was just doing my business. I was doing a computer repair business here in Southern California, and I had already been divorced about 4 years and was completely burned out on the dating scene. I had done some dating, and it was just like one train wreck after another, as far as what I was encountering. And so I got to a point where I just said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to focus on my business, just make money, keep myself entertained, and just focus on that, because the dating thing was really, really sucking bad. And this was way back then. So there I am doing my business, and one of my clients said, because I usually met them in town or at their offices, and I had fixed their computer, and they said, oh, well, let's meet at this Filipino restaurant that I know of. I was like, okay, I figured I'd just get some lunch after. And so I got there a little bit early, and as soon as I walked in, I saw this Filipina woman back then in 2000. Yeah, I think it was like 2009, and I was just gobsmacked. I was just like, wow, you know. And at the time, I was 46, and she was like 32. But long story short, we ended up in a 2.5 year relationship, actually just about 3 years. And so we started dating, and she was from the Philippines. She was just in California to divorce her husband. And so we started seeing each other and, figured, well, we'd wait till her divorce was finalized and, get married. But by 2011, it became clear that, here I was thinking she was a waitress. She was just helping out her sister. It turned out she was actually extremely wealthy. And so she had all her business there in Cebu. So it was on 4th of July that I was at an Indian reservation and I was showing her pictures, and meanwhile I'm, like Skyping with, not Skype, but just sending pictures back and forth to her. And she was going back and forth between California and Cebu to manage her business. And I finally just asked her, I said, well, when are you going to shut down your business and come to California so that we can prepare to get married and, all that? And she said, well, I was thinking more like get married and continue living in Philippines because her business was so big, there was no way she could shut it down. And she said, well, I'm never going to live full time in the United States. I have to be in Cebu to manage everything. And that was the key moment. That moment on July 4th, I believe it was 2011, changed my life because I knew after I hung up with her, I knew I had a decision to make. So I went to a nearby casino. They have a place called the Round Bar. I don't drink much, but I just needed a place that I knew was going to be open 24 hours. So I went there, and I think I had ended up having like 2.5 glasses of wine, and I told myself, I am not going to leave this place until I make a decision about how I'm going to handle this situation. Because I was in love with her, and we'd been together for 2.5 years, and this was a real shock to me because we never talked about where we were going to live. And so I thought, okay, logically, I got a couple options. One is I break up with her. Maybe this is just not going to work out. Just break up with her and move on. That was one option. Another option was to try and convince her to stay in the United States. But again, that didn't seem likely because she had a good point. She had a big business that was cranking out money and she needed to maintain it there in the Philippines. Which led me to the third option. Well, what if crazy idea as it seemed, what if I were to move to the Philippines? Now, I didn't know anything about the Philippines in 2011. And the idea just seemed crazy. But then I thought, okay, like I often do, well, let's just imagine for a moment I was going to do this. What would be the repercussions? What would be required of me? And I thought to myself, well, my kids are already like at the time, they were already like 20, 23 years old and they were already had moved out of state and we kept in touch online anyway, and I could rarely see them. They were busy with family and starting their families and all this. And so I thought to myself, well, they're already grown. I could always shut down my business. Money's not a problem for us. So I thought, well, yeah, why don't I just move to the Philippines permanent, live out my life there? So I told myself 1 year from today, that was July 4th, 2011. I told myself 1 year from today, I'm going to move to the Philippines full time. And I spent the year shutting down my business, just getting all my ducks in a row. And I moved there 2012. Actually, it was like July 11th. So it was almost exactly a year later. There I was landing in the Philippines. And a lot has happened since then. I mean, and all of it I've tried to chronicle there at my Life Beyond the Sea website there on YouTube. Everything about just arriving, the impact of being in a new place, learning the culture, just everything. And as far as the relationship, as just irony or destiny would have it, I arrived in July, got all settled in Mactan. She was in Cebu. We were still waiting for the divorce to get finalized. And her husband, who had moved out, he was like 88 years old. He got really sick. And she, being the good woman that she was, said, well, I can't just abandon him, you know. And so she let him move back in, set up a room in one of the houses for like a hospital bed. And we hardly saw each other because she was always taking care of him. And we finally just amicably agreed, well, you know, I guess this isn't going to work out, because she didn't know how much longer he was going to live. So I found myself all of a sudden in 2013, January, single in the Philippines with no clue what the country was about. Back then, in fact, until I got there, I know this sounds really stupid, but like until like 3 months before I got there and started Googling about Philippines, I thought it was 3 islands, kind of like Hawaii. That's how little I knew. I told myself, when I get to the Philippines, I guess that means I'll never be in a mall again. Maybe there won't be electricity. I just pictured a landing strip in the jungle. That's what I thought they had. I literally knew nothing. And so I've learned a lot since then. So that's how I ended up in the Philippines.
First of all, thank you for doing all that for me, because I learned so much living through you. That's an adventure. That's an adventure.
Mm-hmm. And it still is. It's wild. I mean, in a good way. It's been a great adventure.
Okay, I believe it. A little bit of what you said in the beginning is what my knucklehead cousin, he did just this January, when this whole hype about the Passport Bros, and then we happened to play catch in touch, and he's like, "Hey, cuz, I went to Mexico, just got my passport, just left," and I'm just like, "You could have called me anytime, any day, and we could just walk this through." And he just played very smart about it. He went straight there, stayed in his little local area. He didn't venture out no more, maybe than 5 miles. If he saw a store, maybe 2 feet, he'll hang out there. And he just loved it. He was like, the people was great. He was talking about the pricing, the foods,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a little bit cheap. So the locals had to pretty much let him know, like, hey, was the food good? Was the service good? They pretty much live off their tips, so he tipped them very well, versus what you already know the cost of food is. It's like $3 for a whole spread. And so everything worked out for him. So I was like, please don't ever do that again.
I know.
Man. So how did you, because with your background, because you pretty much got a career of your own, I'm not gonna say you don't need, but you really don't really need for anything else, because you pretty much bust your hump, save, great family orientation for yourself. What made you get into YouTube, and how did you start?
Well, it's a weird thing, because during that whole year, that whole time that I planned to go to the Philippines, having a YouTube channel never even crossed my mind. Literally. I never even thought about it, not even as a passing thought. Back then, there was maybe 2 guys when I started researching. There was like 2 guys that had channels about the Philippines, but honestly, there was nothing there. I mean, no information. It was just like one guy had like 9 videos, and it was just him talking to his neighbor, or it would be videos where guys would just silently walk through the province and then shut it off. It was like 4 minutes of, why did we do that? I mean, there was nothing out there. And there was another guy, but he was a bit loony. He was like living out in the jungle and asking people for money and claiming he was a missionary when he wasn't attached to any church or anything. I mean, just total scammer.
Oh, wow.
So there was like nothing for me to learn from. And so I just what I did was I went to the Philippines. I had plenty on my plate, just adjusting to, again, the new food. Where am I going to get water, clean water? How do I adjust to the temperature there, the humidity? I mean, all these things to deal with. I wasn't thinking about a YouTube channel. So what happened was I started shooting video on this little. It was like a little personal camcorder that I used to use when I was doing process serving, just to
Mm-hmm.
prove that I serve these people. And I was using that to shoot little videos just for fun for my kids, because I wanted them to know I was okay.
Yeah.
They could play the videos for my mom. So I tried emailing it, and the file was too big for email.
Right.
And I was like, well, how am I going to send them these videos? And then I was like, oh yeah, for like 6 years I've had this YouTube channel on Gmail. I thought, well, I'll just put it there and then give the kids my link, and then they can watch the video, So I started putting up these videos. I'm out looking for chimichangas, and I'm finding Filipino breakfast, and I'm videotaping, the kids singing on the sidewalk, just anything, And it never occurred to me that these were public videos. Other people in the world could see them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started getting these comments, and they were like, hey, how do you get a visa? How much did it cost to fly there? And what island are you on? And what about that island? Have you been there yet? I'm like, who are these people? So I ended up moving to Bohol, and it wasn't until 2013, I'd been there like 9 months, that I got so many questions and comments that I thought, I'll go ahead and do a channel. I'll go ahead, and because I had a blog going, I've been writing everything in articles in detail. The blog, if you still go to it, it's lifebeyondthesea.com. You'll see the articles I wrote there. That was the detailed journal I was focusing on. So I thought, well, instead of writing articles, I'll do video. I did, and then I was doing video for like 4 months, and somebody wrote in and said, hey, how much do you make on AdSense? I was like, what's AdSense?
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could get paid for it.
Yeah.
And back then there was no requirements. All you had to do was press a button. That's it.
Yep.
Now you're on AdSense. So I pressed the button, and it was like, it took another 4 months before I got my first $100. So I never got into it for the money. I just did it because I thought, well, this will help other people that want to come to the Philippines, like to shine a light on the path, to say, here's what there is to enjoy, here's what there is to expect, and here's what there is to worry about and avoid. Those were my main 3 focuses. And to this day, that's been my focus. If I can save somebody the hassle and heartache or financial loss by being prepared, I've done my job.
Right.
If I can direct someone to enjoy the beauty of a certain island, as opposed to just, why go to Makati? It's like, you may as well go to Los Angeles or Queens. Go to the Philippines for the greenery and the beauty and all this. There's plenty to enjoy. That's been more. So that's how I ended up with a YouTube channel. And it just sort of fell in my lap.
And I'm glad it did too, because it really did shine a light. If you don't see it yourself, it's because on yours versus, because when I went to Ireland, I went as a group, so that was a whole different experience versus where you went by yourself. So the stuff that you was detailing, like it was one content you was explaining, like, hey, stay pretty much local where you are. Don't make that home base first when you get there. You can get a hotel for a couple of days. Certain people you date, just be aware of certain how culture differences, because us in the West, we got our own multiple plateaus of cultures, whether it's black, green, white, and purple, but we're still Americans. But when we go to another country, we're guests. And within that conversation of being a guest, understand the country that you're hailing from. And then even in the Philippines, I remember there was a conversation of the 2 dynamics. There's the and you could explain that a little bit. It was the city-ish version of some of the Filipinas, and then you had the what's they call them? It's another term from out in the country, the province girls. So if you want to explain those 2, what's the difference between? Because I was at Los Angeles main city, Manila, Los Angeles, and there's another one. But when you mentioned 3 islands that you thought, it's basically like what, 7 to 9 islands in the Philippines?
Yeah, I've been around. Yeah. My whole life I've been a nomad. Well, there is a big difference between city, if you want to call them that, city girls and province girls in the Philippines.
Mhm.
Now, something I have said probably since my fourth or fifth video is I've been always emphasizing that there are certain generalities, like, there's such a thing as a bell curve. The majority, 80% of a trend falls in the middle. Now, you're always going to have exceptions. So
Mhm.
I've always said there is no all. All Filipinas from the city are not good or bad. All Filipinas from the province are not all good or bad,
Right.
but the majority. So we're talking about a majority trend, something you can expect to happen. Um, the difference I saw, because I found myself single, and I realized, number one, older men, as opposed to younger men, and we can probably get into that, but
Mhm.
older men are actually very desired in the Philippines,
Mhm.
by Filipinas. And so I found myself all of a sudden going from, 4 years being divorced before meeting the Filipina in California, where I gave up on dating because I wasn't attracting the kind of woman I wanted,
Yeah.
and I was getting older women that had to be age appropriate, within 3 years. So, like, women in their 50s with a whole lot of baggage and debt and kids and whatever. And that's not what I was looking for. And so I went from that to being in the Philippines, where all of a sudden I'm just going to get groceries. And I've got 20, 22, 24-year-old Filipinas hitting on me. Well, they don't go out of their way, but they let you know with
Yeah.
the way they look at you, they smile. They're very coy and they want you to make the first move, but they kind of let you know they're interested. Women have a way of letting a guy know they're interested.
Correct.
Now, with the city girls that I started dating, what I noticed was that they were growing up, getting up into their 20s. They grew up, and a lot of the time they spent at the mall, going to the mall and seeing all the shiny, neat, expensive stuff they couldn't afford, whether it be clothes or shoes or whatever. And these girls grew up noticing the only Filipinas that they see who have what's behind the glass at the mall are either the rich Filipinas, which is like, I put it at 20%, 25% max.
Mhm.
The rest are really working hard to make a living. Or it was the Filipinas that were married to a foreigner. Those are
Mhm.
the Philippines. So the city girls grew up knowing if they want the nice stuff at the mall, they got to hook up with a foreigner. you
Yeah.
know Now the province girls, whole different thing. They grew up a lot like my mom grew up in the 1940s. you know the girls in the province, and I'm talking province, not
Yeah.
just the edge of the province right by the city. That's not the same. I'm talking province, jungle.
Yes.
These girls, they grow up, the culture in the Philippines, the boys pretty much get a free pass. They don't do chores. They don't get a whole lot of discipline. They're, just kind of left to do what they want to do. The girls, though, it's like they better not be out after dark. And first thing crack of dawn, chores start. Cleaning the house, you
Mhm.
know, feeding chickens, or bringing water in from the local community well,
Mhm.
just clean house, all these domestic expectations. And by the time that they're into their 20s and such, they're very innocent, very naive. Many end up getting pregnant from the local guy, the local Filipino guy, and some of them stay, many of them leave and leave them as a single mother. Um, but these are women that have the old school traditional values that are very hard to find in the West nowadays. And so, can you find a good woman in the city? Yes, you can, but you're going to have to sift through the haystack a little longer because of how they grew up. And in the province, it's easier to find a good traditional woman, but you have to be alert that there's going to be a small percentage who are going to not adjust to materialism very well.
Okay.
They've never had that much money at their disposal. And some of them, again, I believe the minority, some of those province girls, when they get together with a foreigner, an expat, it's kind of like, when say someone wins the lotto and all of a sudden they think they're a more important person. The money goes to their head, and that's
Yeah.
what can happen to a lot of Filipinas. So that's kind of the generalized difference. You got city girls who think more in terms of this is how I get what I want. You got province girls who are raised with the more traditional values of, love your husband, take care of him, he's the breadwinner, try to accommodate, his desires and goals, so you can have a nice family, unit.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the difference I've seen there with the province girls versus the city girls.
Okay, I definitely agree with that because I think around 2017, 18, I came across three. Two, we've been like pen pals. One's been very honest, so transparent. It doesn't matter what happened to her. I think she was dating a guy that was in the army, and they had a kid, and he went somewhere else, and she's left with the baby. Then it was a province girl. Same thing, like you said, crack of dawn, she gets up because there's more than one. So it's like one had a responsibility. One would do the cooking, the other one would do the cleaning, another one would watch the baby. So she was like the watching the baby. And she actually was active at work. But then I guess when there was no more work, she was working within the family. So they will pay her to be like, I think a housemate, what she called it.
Yeah.
And she would just babysit or be a nanny for her nephew.
Yeah, they call him a yaya.
Yeah. And then it was another one. She was in the province, but she was so straightforward. She was like, "Hey." One day it's like, "Hey, you like me?" The next day it's like, "Hey, can I get money?" I'm like, "Who are you?" Yeah, you gotta go. So yeah. So speaking of that, so how would you inform some guys on the vetting process of how to kind of weed away and pretty much if your interest is looking for a long-term relationship, how do you find that type of girl versus because again, you pretty much like the babe magnet when you walked in, so just minding your business. But when other guys actually trying to look, how can they find their ways to sift through that?
Well, there's two sets of guys, so there's two sets of best approaches.
Mhm.
One set of guys that you're talking about who want to find a relationship, and that's what we're talking about. Guys who want an actual solid, good relationship. Well, one set of those guys are in their home country, whether it's United States, Canada, wherever, and they're not in the Philippines. They're going on the dating sites, and this is where the trouble begins. And then you've got another set of guys who are looking for a solid relationship, but they're living full time in the Philippines. And so there's two separate different approaches because the guy that's still back home and his only option to talk to a Filipina is through a dating site. Well, the problem is, I would say with pretty much all the dating sites, other than maybe Christian Filipina, who is proactive about trying to get rid of the scammers and all that. All the other ones I've ever seen or participated with, and I never needed one when I was in my home country. I started messing with them after, again, the other relationship ended. Is what I found is these dating sites are just rife with scammers. People that are, and maybe scammers is a harsh word, but let's just say they're insincere about a relationship. Maybe they want a relationship, but it always ends up coming down to money. And some people call it the romance scam. Some people, just say, well, and here's what happens, even in a best case scenario, a guy that's still in his home country, he starts talking to a Filipina he's never met online. Here's what happens. Even if no scamming is involved, they start chatting. And Filipinas, they move at a faster rate. I mean, I am not kidding. You might talk to a Filipina a week later, she's convinced you're her fiance, you're her boyfriend, 3 months later, she's calling you her husband. I mean, they really throw themselves into a relationship. And again, we're not talking about scammers, but what happens is all of this rapport, this bonding, if you want to call it, this emotional attachment and investment begins as they're talking to each other every day and, hey, how are you doing? Da, da, da. Well, what happens is there's a lot of investment going on emotionally. And so when it comes out, as like I said, I would put it at between 75 to 80% of Filipinas are struggling financially. They're either underemployed or unemployed. And so it's only natural that you start caring about this person. And then she says, oh, and she's not scamming. She's just telling you what her life is like. She's got not much money for food, or she's having trouble finding a job, or her brother is sick and they really do need medicine. Now, the scammers will use the exact same lines. So here's the problem: you don't know the scammers from the ones who are really being honest with their life, because they really do have these problems. And from 7,000 miles away, you don't know what she does after she gets off of the video chat. You don't know if she cooks dinner for her husband and kids and she's telling you she's single. You don't know any of that. So I've always told guys, and I know it's hard because not everybody is at a place in their life where they can just drop everything and live in the Philippines. I understand that. But if you want the best answer on how to have a good relationship and find one in the Philippines, you got to be living there. Why? Because you have to spend time with this woman in person, in person. Now there's people who will say, but I chat with her 5 hours a day, every day. I know her. You know how many guys I've talked to? I accept, I used to charge, I don't charge anymore. I get so many guys that contact me on Facebook, on PM, and I welcome them to do it. And confidentially, they contact me and they tell me a very similar story over and over and over again. They say, hey, I was chatting with this Filipina for 6 months. It was so good, looked so great. I showed up and and I'm ready to finally meet her and get married or whatever. And she blocked him on everything. And then he's wondering what's going on. Now, meanwhile, he'd been sending her at first $100 a month, then $300 a month, pretty soon $500 a month. Now that he showed up in the Philippines, well, the whole time she was married. She was never going to make plans to marry this guy. He was just an income stream for her. And he found out the hard truth after he got to the Philippines. And I have talked to so many guys that this has happened to. I've even talked to guys who, this shows you how little you can know about a person just doing video chat, never having met them in person. I know of at least a dozen guys or more who went through this whole routine, talking to the Filipina, doing the video chat. They finally get there, only to find out she's a ladyboy. Wasn't even a real woman. Okay? That's how little you can know about somebody you've only known online. So back to, how do you find a good relationship? You really got to live in the Philippines. You really do. Because and once you're in the Philippines, forget about the dating sites. Go out, walk the neighborhood. Go and be alert. Just be circumspect. When you go to the bank, talk to the Filipina. They're very open to talk, whether it's the bank teller or the girl selling ice cream at the kiosk or the cashier register at the grocery store. Flirting is like a part of the culture. It's really an interesting kind of dance in a way. They will let you know they're interested, but they're not going to ask you for your phone number. They're not going to be that forward. They want the man to take that risk of rejection first. That's just very traditional. That's how they do it. So I know it's not the news most guys want to hear because most guys cannot just drop what they're doing and go to the Philippines, but it is the best way to get a real feel for this person, start dating them every day, spend time with them every day, and then you're going to find out either she is who you think she is, or she's got all these weird excuses. Well, I can't meet on weekends, and I can't be out after 6 p.m., or I can only see you certain days. Well, that's because she's got another boyfriend, Filipino, or she's married, or she's hiding kids and telling you she doesn't have any. That kind of stuff is easier to find out in person than it is online. So I hate to say it, but doing a full online connection, you're just begging for problems.
I'm so glad you said that because let me get my face in it real quick. When we had these YouTube talking points and everybody want to take one little piece of something and say, hey, well, if you just do this, if you just do that, you actually have to put your whole self in that relationship to try to figure out this person. That is the problem with a lot of these, not all, because if you're on this side of the fence and you're sitting there pointing fingers and trying to make the calls and reaching out and you do that, I know this person, she's for me, but you keep throwing out the money, she's not for you. You can trust me. He's 100% right because I seen where it was one video where, and I believe it was you, it was a
Mhm.
guy, the husband was sitting there on the couch minding his business while the wife
Mhm.
was sitting there saying everything and then some to the foreigner and just getting it all.
Mhm.
Now, there's one that you did a reaction to. Shout out to Paul Odo. I think he reminded me like an uncle to me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But there was a reaction that you did explaining that one where a guy that was a foreigner sold the
Yeah, Big Ed.
vehicle. Yeah,
Yeah.
Big Ed. I felt the whole transformation of that conversation. And I'm glad a lot of people actually jumped in to support. And we'll talk about a little support group that y'all have on that end too. Um, he pretty much gave up his whole life savings, sold everything just for this Filipina. And when he went down there, it wasn't what he thought it was. And then it just went to, for him, and this is me, lack of better words, went straight to hell. And luckily he had, guys like y'all, hey, this whole community on that end to say, hey, you know what, let's have a plan, let's make a plan, and help build you back up where you can be more comfortable with yourself. And that's pretty much what I saw. He was eating better, looking healthier. Heck, he even had a smile on his face. The first two videos, it was like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. It was easy for a lot of people to, kind of a side note, to bag on him, but really, he was doing the best he could with the
Yes,
information he had. And again, a lot of what he encountered when he got there was a huge surprise to him because when you're in the comfort of your own home and you click on the webcam, it's like you talk for 2 hours and then you click it off and you go about your day. You're not dealing with, like when he went to her house and like, okay, here's where you're going to take a shower. And he's like, oh my God, you
yes.
know? So you don't learn all that stuff unless you're in person right there seeing him every day.
Yes. Shout out to Sunshine Shoulders. It was because I have a list of people just for, like you said, the documentary history and the lessons because Sunshine Shoulders next to Paul Odog actually give like a pricing list. Sunshine Shoulders, another guy along with Paul, also talk about just how you're living in that area, like quote unquote. And I'm quoting Sunshine Shoulders. He's always say boots on the ground. That's his whole motto,
Yeah.
boots on the ground. So if you're living, if and it was another story where just if you're trying to bank, everything's a little bit more pacier. Take your time with things because here in the States, we can get a checking account in 5 minutes just by the apps on our phone. We
Yeah.
might even walk there, but there you literally got to walk there, open up a check account. That might take a 3-day process. Heck,
Yeah.
just even get some cash might be a hassle too. So these
Yeah.
are things you got to, but just on the daily basis, taking a shower, taking a bath, the bathroom might not be what you're more familiar with, or a shower, it might be something you're familiar with. So the living there, some places versus how you're accustomed to is so much different, and even down to the internet. Because I'm pretty much a big fanatic about my Wi-Fi connection, my internet, and we already know the brownouts is what they call them.
Yep.
You won't have no spotty internet connection there. You just have it just cuts off
For
out the
8 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's go to the beach. You know, ain't gonna be no internet, no fan, no air con. Just go to the beach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody has a question. Appreciate you. If y'all have any questions, like very transparent here, very open. Again, I will leave his link at the bottom. He's very respond to everything. So somebody has said, Enrique, what's your opinion on Passport Bros? Yeah, we'll get in that, but you can answer that question.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, honestly, I've only seen maybe 3 of their videos. As a vlogger, I've just always been this way. Now that all these years I've been a vlogger, I actually don't watch other people's channels like about dating or the Philippines, because I kind of want to create my own ideas, internally, like fresh. I always want to come up with something fresh. I never want to look at another channel and go, oh, they're getting views on this, I'll do that too. I never wanted to do that. So I don't watch many other channels. Now I've watched about 3 episodes of the Passport Brothers, and from what I saw, this is what I like. I like that them and other vloggers in the last, I'd say 3 years. I wish I could remember the name of this other guy, but I like that certain vloggers and channels have began to push back, because up until about 3 years ago, men were becoming kind of pushed into the background. They were being treated, especially men over, say, 45, but even younger guys. It's like somehow this dynamic came along to where feminism just, like, I don't know, just went off into the ozone, and suddenly, all of a sudden, a woman that was not desirable on any level. She wasn't attractive physically. She had a horrible personality, materialistic, selfish. These women all of a sudden got it into their heads that they can be picky and choosy about what kind of man they're going to have. And guys fell into it. And all of a sudden, they started getting this idea they didn't deserve better. They needed to be a doormat. They had to bow down to these expectations. And what I like about Passport Brothers and several other channels is finally there's some pushback. Finally, guys are stating, and even women, many women vloggers are saying the exact same thing. They're pushing back on this and saying, you know what? If you want a relationship, you guys aren't even talking about a good, healthy relationship. You're just talking about, I want a man to pay for all my stuff. But if you want a good relationship, you got to bring something to the table. You got to be kind. You got to be compassionate. You got to be loving. You got to be giving. You got to think about what you're giving a man in a relationship, not just, here's my list of demands. Here's my list of what I expect, And so I'm glad with Passport Brothers and others, and again, even women that are correcting the tide and saying, you know what? No, no. We would rather stay single, or we would rather find women who are old school traditional values overseas. We would rather get on a plane and travel across the planet rather than bow down to these unrealistic demands that you're laying out for us. So I like that they're going in that direction.
Piece of said they want a job, not a man. That's fair. Have you came across any female expats or female passport girls?
You know what's funny is I've been there since 2012, so it's 10 years now. In 10 years, I'm sure there's maybe more now because the millennial, nomad expats are becoming more of a thing now. But in 10 years, I've run into maybe 5 female full-time expats. Five. And out of the 5, two of them, because I talked to each one of them. One of them was there as a missionary. Okay. The two of the other five were lesbians that came for the Filipinas.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh, and then the fourth one, she was there because her and her husband had been married for decades in the States. And just as a retirement option, they both decided they could live better in the Philippines. So she was there as the wife of her husband, the both of them same age, retired. So that's the four. I can't remember the fifth one. But really it's primarily men. It's vastly men. Pretty much from age like 25 to 40 is the minority, and then like 45 and up is the majority. Retired guys that are already wealthy enough with their investments or their rental incomes that they can just drop everything and go move to the Philippines full time.
Okay, that's an interesting five list of people. For the women, I came across two. Uh, one sink. Well, no, one actually left from the states, went to I want to say Thailand, and got married to a guy there. And then I saw another female expat with her husband somewhere in Mexico. And then I wouldn't count really. If anybody ever followed him, his name is I'm pretty much chopping up the name. Uh, Vagabond Awakes.
Sounds
He
familiar.
yeah, he's a entrepreneur, business guy. He dated a supermodel in Middle East Asia, and they just kicked it off. And been very close and tight. So they pretty much travel between the Philippines, somewhere Middle East Asia, and a lot of parts of Mexico.
Mhm.
Really cool guy. Yeah, I think he's also in Cali too. He went there for something happened to a family member. So he actually it was crazy because it's like around the same time you left, he went. So I was like, okay, maybe they know each other. I don't know. But yeah, he's a very cool guy. He does a lot of breakdowns on a lot of the financial aspects, just the cost of living there. A lot of retirees is actually there on certain parts. They actually explain what's their reason for being there. So pretty cool guy. Um, all right. Again, if anybody got any questions, let it rip. Let the questions rip. So all right, so we pretty much talked about that and the female expats and the passport bros. Just a little fun question here: is there any foods that you like there? You say, hey, when I first got there, I could tolerate it. Was there like a level there, like because you know most of us Americans, we get there, we're looking at anything funny and kind of sideways, like I don't think so. Then at that one, like
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, now I'm a Southern California guy, and even though I grew up in the Hispanic culture, it's a different thing when I go to Mexico. There's certain dishes there that, kind of off my limits. Now, same thing when I went to the Philippines. Um, there are quite a few dishes I like. Okay, like for instance, they have this soup called pork sinigang soup.
okay.
It's really good. And anytime I get a cold or a flu, or even anytime, that's the first thing I crave when I'm in the Philippines. Is I get my girlfriend to make, well, my fiance, to make pork sinigang soup, and it's basically pork, cabbage. You can put carrots, but the unique flavor of it is it's kind of tangy. It's not like vinegar. It's hard to describe, but it's really good, really good. And there's like for instance boneless lechon I like, which is
I heard
different
that.
from they have a full lechon, which is the whole pig. It's like a 3-4 month old pig that they rotisserie. That's okay. What I like is the boneless lechon because it's just like a big slab of meat, pork belly, and they roll lemongrass and seasonings in it into like a big fat Tootsie Roll, tie it up with some wire, and cook it over a rotisserie.
That sounds good.
Boneless and delicious.
That sounds
Man,
good.
it's like the Filipino version of the American pot roast. It is so good.
Oh, and fun fact for the foods, if anybody doesn't know, there's a restaurant they have in the Philippines, actually in California. I had found that it's like way off somewhere, and which is funny because like I was doing for me, I'm comparing the differences because like their spaghetti there is like more sweet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, very sweet.
it's a dessert.
Yes, yeah.
It's a hot dessert, is
Yeah.
what it.
The only thing caught my eye, I was like, okay, I'll stick to the chicken, but maybe I can import my own hot sauce over there, you know?
Yeah,
So I will
yeah,
say this, my goal was to my side goes like, hey, maybe have the idea of being the youngest expat there. But there's a guy by the name of Austin Holman. I don't know his last name, but Austin, but he's like around 26, 20, 25, 26, and he just
Mhm.
recently relocated to the DR. So he's like the youngest I've seen there. So he seemed like he's pretty happy. He's actually pretty much doing what you're doing, just explaining this the lifestyle and the dating rituals with most men, so they'll learn better. But
Yeah.
we have some questions here. So first up, we have Big Cap. He says, "What part of the world is he in?" So I'm guessing he's referring to you.
Oh, okay. Well, right now I'm here for the holidays. With my family in California. There's a big long story behind that, but basically that's where I am now. And I plan to be back in the Philippines by February. We've got uh, all of our family birthdays are in February, and so I'm thinking of staying till we celebrate that. But by February, I plan to be back in the Philippines, and I'll be. I'm in a relationship with my Filipino fiance. We've been together a little over 3 years now, and so when I get back, we're going to pick up where we left off. We started out traveling the Philippines because we want to travel and live like 4 to 6 months on all these particular islands we have a list of, so that after about a couple of years we can look back and say, okay, which did we enjoy the most? Let's buy some land there, let's settle down. But first we want to, because there's places she hasn't been, places I haven't been, so we want to feel them out, really get a good feel for it. But right now in California, and then heading back to the Philippines.
Okay. Next question. Peace Love says, "Does he miss modern conveniences, or was the adjustment not too bad?"
Well, when I first moved there, it all depends on how much you're willing to spend. If you want what become luxuries, you have to pay for them. So when I first moved there, um, because she wasn't the woman that I originally went there for, because her divorce wasn't finalized, and that's a big deal
Yeah.
in the Philippines. You're not supposed to be seeing anybody, and she was very prominent. She was known in the city government and all this, very wealthy landowner and all this. And so, for appearance's sake, I lived on Mactan and she was on Cebu. They're connected by 2 bridges. Well, now it's 3 bridges. And so we had to sneak around. We would meet, like I would go in the movie theater, we'd text each other, and then we'd meet in the movie theater and we could watch a movie together, and then we had to go out separate exits. I mean, because you will not believe, in the Philippines, as big of a city as Cebu is, people are networked like you wouldn't believe. And I remember one time we went outside of Cebu, parked in the parking garage because she had a really nice black Suburban with tinted windows. Nobody knew we were there. We parked in the underground parking garage, went to the elevator to go into the mall outside of Cebu. As soon as the elevator doors open, who steps out? One of her attorneys. And like, oh, well, who's this guy? And she goes, well, he's buying some property and I'm showing him around. That was the cover story, but how long are we going to get away with that? So, back to modern conveniences. So I was living on Mactan, again, for appearance's sake, until the divorce. So there I was at this little place, a little studio, and it had everything I needed. It was refurbished, freshly painted, and all that. But little things you take for granted, like toilet paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people don't use it. They have a little thing they call a tabo. It's basically a Tupperware cup with a handle and a bucket of water. And then you just imagine the rest, It took me the longest time to figure out, well, which arm goes where. And really, I felt like a total retard, you know? So, as far as conveniences, I was fortunate that I had an uncle who had lived in Vietnam. Well, he did 2 tours in Vietnam, getting shot at, but he was the only relative I had that had lived outside the United States. So I went to him, telling him my plans to live in the Philippines. I said, "How can I best adjust to life in another country?" And he gave me 2 really good pieces of advice. He said, "Number one, when you see things that are not done like they are back here in the States,
Mm.
don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. Don't go telling the locals, here's the right way to do it." He goes, "Don't do that. You're just going to piss them off, and they're not going to listen to you anyway." He goes, "You need to do it." And that led to the second piece of advice. He said, "When you go there, watch what they do. Watch what they eat, what they don't eat. Where do they get their water?" He goes, "This is what we learned in Vietnam out in the bush. We learned from the locals what to eat, what not to eat, how to conduct yourself, what you do, what you don't do." He goes, "Just listen and observe." He goes, "And then do what they do, you know?" So when I got there, and a lot of expats, this is what you'll run into, so many little things. It's not like back home. So don't bitch about it.
Yeah.
Just tell yourself, I'm in another country. I need to acclimate. He was a Marine, and he said, this is what we do. We acclimate and overcome. You learn to absorb the atmosphere that you're in when you're in a strange environment. And so that's my advice to anyone, is my uncle's advice, is if you want, for instance, I'll give you a good example. In 2000, right before, well, I guess it was 2020 up until 2021, my fiance and I, we lived comfortably in one of the nicest condo units right across from Ayala Mall. This is where like all the rich Koreans went to live. And we were comfortable. We had everything that you would have in a Western apartment. Nice microwave, big flat screen TV, comfortable bed, kitchen, the whole 9 yards. Nothing roughing it at all. But we have also stayed, at Airbnbs and different places where we just had to rough it. It's like urban camping. It's just you just got to be ready for. And I lived in the province. I lived
Mm.
out in Bohol. You might have seen the videos. I was out in the jungle.
Yeah.
I was the only expat in that whole community, and behind the community was 40 miles of jungle. I mean, it was roughing it. I mean, it was like there weren't even windows. The windows, those bricks that have holes in them, like a design.
Yeah.
Okay, that was their idea of a window. And so at night, the critters had come in. I one time went to my bath towel, ready to take a bath. I was just about to, put it on the hook and everything. I saw this scorpion, this big, just hanging on my towel. I used to have lizards come in. I didn't mind them so much, but I had a turkey running through my house one time. I mean, he crapped everywhere.
And here I am complaining about roosters and dogs.
Oh man, when you're out in the province, now it was beautiful at night. I put every night. I usually did a bonfire and beautiful stars. It's beautiful, but it's like camping. You got to learn to adjust. You really do.
Yes, well said. Next question to lead Guitar Man 1. I appreciate you. Again, if y'all new coming in, hit the likes, subscribe. All the good if you got good questions, bring them on in. He says at the Great Pill, what's the percentage of relationships that end up badly? Again, I'm not a data statistics. I can't answer that for you. I mean, maybe REEKAY would go and shot at that one. So do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, now I'll try to put this nicely. I've dated since 2012 a lot of Filipinas, a lot. I mean, more than I ever dreamed I would ever date in my lifetime growing up. I never thought I would, and I'm not some chick's boy. I'm not good looking. It's just that's how the Philippines works. It's very easy to have a dating social life. I am not kidding. It's another thing you have to be aware of when you move there. Just like becoming suddenly wealthy, when you're suddenly desirable by attractive, beautiful women every day, everywhere you go, you can literally be dating a different woman every day. I am not exaggerating.
Mhm.
I mean, I've had two dates in the same day, just because I scheduled them on the same day by accident. It's just you can literally be dating women if you wanted to, 3 a day if you have the stamina for it, but every day easily. I mean, without even trying. This is not even going to the dating sites. You just go to get some milk or some banana bread at the bakery, and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Are you single? It's very common there to ask that.
Yeah.
That's one of the most often questions you'll be asked. Are you single, or where's your wife? They don't want to know where your wife is. They want to know if you have a wife. you know? So having dated so much and having talked to so many expats, again, about their personal experiences with me, this is the answer that I come to when, he's asking about the percentage of relationships that end badly.
Yeah, it depends on. Go ahead.
But to define end badly, we'll define that as two people met, they got to know each other, and decided they're not going to stay together. Okay, we'll use that as the definition of ended badly, because ended badly could also mean one of them ended up dead. But that doesn't happen very often.
No.
So if we define it as two people that meet, tried it out for a while, and decided, no, this just isn't going to work out. I hate to say it, but within 3 months, 85% of the people that you meet and date, they're gone. Because you will realize the crazy. They can't hide it.
Yes.
So after 3 months of hanging out with them in person, some don't even last 3 weeks. 85% drop out within 3 months. Easily. So plan on when you date in the Philippines, you're going to be like looking for that needle in the haystack. You're going to have to, it's not that you want to be a chick's boy. You're just going to have to date a lot, because you meet some wonderful, sweet Filipina at the mall or something. You start dating, and then you realize, oh, well, she's got 4 kids. I don't want to raise 4. Or she's still married, and she can't get a divorce. You're going to have to pay a couple grand and wait 2 years to get an annulment. Or she expects you to hand out a ton of money for her parents, or whatever it is. There's a deal breaker. The deal breakers come within 3 months, guaranteed. And if you don't have a deal breaker after 3 months, now you got a shot at 15%. You're going to have a great relationship.
There you go. All right. I hope that answered his question with the percentage ratings.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the last question. Peace Love says, wasn't there in the big, I wasn't here in the beginning, I guess, with the conversations. How long has he lived there? I'm guessing the Philippines. And when is he coming back to the States?
Yeah, 2012, 2011 is when I began planning. 2012, July 11th was when I moved into the Philippines permanent. And I did spend a year in Vietnam, traveling different cities there that I enjoyed. I love Vietnam, by the way. And then I went back to the Philippines to be with my fiance. And then I came here to California because my mom's health was doing bad. And then there were some other things that happened. But now I'll be going back to the Philippines by February.
Yeah. And again, that's all that is on his channel. It's like, again, his channel is pretty much a vlog versus mine's a live podcast. Sometimes I'll do pre-recordings. And here in the Great Podcast, I appreciate everybody's perspective. So definitely with his story going on, it's so much gray there versus what I hear from everybody else. It's like this story needs to be had. It's a great conversation. So again, REEKAY, I appreciate you just for even sharing that, man. So
yeah,
definitely, I would drop his link there. I'd send it in the chat. It's conversations, and from what I hear, it's a lot because when people mention passport bros, I'm like, you have to do the homework. You have to ask the right questions. Who are you? Again, most importantly, understand what's your intent. If your intent is just to go bad girls, you're going to get what you're going to get. If your intent is just to, if you're looking for exclusive girlfriend or wife, okay, great. Now, one perfect advice Rika gave, hey, go there, live there. Go there, be there 3 months, whatever. And if your intent is to say, hey, I maybe got a good idea, this is what I want, okay, start making plans to come down here. So it got to be planning and preparation for this. Big Caps has a question. He says, so is he saying dating overseas better than here in the States? Dealer's choice.
Absolutely. It is such a whole entire other world. I remember after I'd been in the Philippines a year and a half before I came back to visit the United States to be with family for Christmas. And since I was here for 30 days, I met up with a bunch of my buddies that I've been known from work and, just different places. And they could not believe. They could not. I mean, I had to show them photographs. It's on my phone. It's like, no, I really did. Like this month, I dated 15 women, beautiful women. And they're like, oh, they weren't pretty. I was like, well, here's one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. And they were flabbergasted because they were lucky if they dated 2 women that were a 6 or a 7 in the year. And I'm like, no, that's just another Tuesday for me, And so the Philippines, the dating scene, the social scene is just off the charts. But again, it's like having too much of anything, too much time, too much power, too much money, too much alcohol. When you have the availability of so many women, some guys cannot handle that. They literally destroy their own life in every way, financially, emotionally, because you would think it's paradise to just be able to date so many women. And I can't emphasize this enough. I am not exaggerating. If you wanted to date 6 women in a week and take the 7th day off, you can in the Philippines. But here's the thing. If you're dating and you're looking for a relationship, you really have to put the brakes on and be selective. You have to weed these women out so that only certain ones make it to the second date, because you've really got to have your head screwed on straight, because otherwise it gets intoxicating. And I've seen guys literally become drunk with the idea of one woman after another woman after another woman. And what ends up happening is emotionally they get destroyed. They become hardened. They become kind of callous and cynical and jaded. Financially, they find themselves handing out money. It's like, oh, I dated this girl last week, and okay, here's some money. And I knew a guy that was a manager at a resort in Boracay. Every payday, within 4 days of getting his payday, he had already given out his money to all these different girls he was dating at the same time, and would have to get an advance on his pay to cover his own expenses. It's almost like a person with a gambling problem. So I don't want to give the impression that, yeah, it's all fun and games and it's a man's paradise. You can date all these women. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are so many women ready to date you. You better have your head screwed on straight. You better, again, apply the brakes. Learn how to weed them out and go, you know what? She's not what I'm looking for. I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to date her. I'm going to be selective. I'm going to put the brakes on, maybe date 2 or 3 a week, and then really think, okay, is this really who I'm looking for? So I would say that's the way you got to approach it. Otherwise, you'll destroy yourself. You really will.
Fair enough. One question what lady said, I guess it's pertaining to what you said earlier, said, don't they just want the green card? Me personally, I would say not all. There's some, but it comes down to the weeding process. Some people just don't like me saying vetting, but that's a part of it.
that is necessary.
Yeah. And again, it's asking questions because, again, just from his personal experience, if I'm having a conversation, communication, long distance, she could say whatever she want to say. She can give you whatever vibe she want to give you there. Long distance, it's not that much effort. But when I come there, boots on the ground, and either meeting the family, her local spots, you see a whole different energy.
Mhm.
You just see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'll give you one good example of that. When I was single in Cebu, right before me going to Vietnam, I met this wonderful Filipina. I just saw her, walked up to her, started talking to her, and I mean, just cute as a button, sweet. She was about 23, right about there. And so I got her number, and so we started going out, and she was even in a couple of my videos. I know
Mhm.
people are going to look for them. I already took them down. But she wasn't I wasn't interviewing her. It's just we went to some tourist spots and she was with me, so you can see her well, you could, but anyways. So I meet this Filipina and we were together maybe 5 weeks. Now this is in-person dating. This is not off a website. This is in-person dating. And it took me 5 weeks. And what she would do is she would come on Friday after work. So one thing, I knew she had a job, she was working at a grocery store. She would come over after work on Friday. She would stay until Monday morning, early Monday in the morning. She would catch the jeepney and go to work. And then the rest of the week, she'd stay at her parents' house. She was still living with her parents. So when you first meet someone, and again, this is the thing that I want to clarify is, some people may be watching this and saying, oh, they're just dating a bunch of women to date a bunch of women. No. You meet a woman, she's a total stranger. You barely met her at the mall. You don't know nothing about her. Nothing. Other than she's single and she wants to date you. That's all you know. Oh, now, what is this? Now I'm getting a call. Hold on a second.
It's all good.
And I know it's not Facebook because I closed my Facebook. Oh, it's Google Voice. It's,
Do you still have the window open? That's pretty much why.
okay. Yeah, the tab was open there from Google Voice. Anyways, so when you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to find the tab here. But let's see. I know you're here somewhere. Yeah. So anyway, there we go. Okay, I'm back. Okay. So here I meet this woman. I don't know anything about her. She's a total stranger. Okay. All I know is she's really cute. So it took 5 weeks of dating her and having her over for 3-day weekends. And what I learned in those 5 weeks was that she had 2 kids. Okay. I didn't know that when I met her. And one of my criteria, I wanted to have a serious relationship with somebody who had no kids. Yeah. No kids. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. I'm just saying that was one of my criteria. Mm-hmm. So I found out she had 2 kids. And so I told her, I said, well, I'm really not looking for a long-term relationship with somebody that has kids, but she really enjoyed being with me. I enjoyed being with her. So we kept on, dating. She kept coming over. And we're like, okay, as long as we both know we're just doing this for fun, this is not going anywhere, but we really enjoyed hanging out. Well, it took 5 weeks before I finally realized she was an alcoholic. Now, a lot of Filipinos drink. They'll have some Red Horse on the weekend. People in America have a beer on the weekend. That's normal. That's not an alcoholic. I found out she was missing days from work, showing up at work hungover, getting into arguments with her parents, all because she was getting drunk every day that I wasn't with her. Monday through Thursday, she was drinking. And then she wouldn't drink the 3 days she was with me. So when that came out, that's a real hot spot for me. I was like, okay, we're done. I am not going to have an alcoholic involved in my life. Yeah. You go work that out on your own. So we were done. I was like, that's it. Deal breaker. Now, what does that mean? That means that now that I ended dating her, I ended up dating someone else, and then someone else, and then someone else, and someone else, because these things, everybody has their own list of deal breakers. These things come up.
Yeah.
It's almost like trying to find somebody, like looking for the right job. It's like you got to interview, bam, you find what you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's not really that different from women, because the stuff you're saying is, the position that you've been put in is pretty much the hot chick position. So the
Yeah,
hot chick is always get the multiple options. So she got to weed them out too. So now you're in that position like, okay, I didn't expect this. Now I got to figure it out. So I got to weed them out also. So I mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's how I see it. It was a question. Let me scroll up. Where is it? And again, I appreciate everybody for chiming on in. If you're coming through, definitely hit the like button. If you're new, subscribe. I appreciate that. And okay. Shout out to Lead again. He said, Great Pill Podcast. Can you ask him what's the average age and with or without children are open for dating? I guess he's speaking about the women in the Philippines.
Yeah, in the Philippines.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, that are open for dating. It's literally from like age 18 to 60. I mean, there's tons of women that are single that as soon as they get out of, well, they get out of high school, I think it's 16, but as soon as they turn 18, they jump on the dating sites, or they're, looking for a foreigner at age 18. I mean, they're ready to jump into this. And I did a video. In fact, it's my most watched video. It got like, I think it's now going on 1.5 million views, maybe 2 million views. And I did a video on the benefits of dating someone over 35. Okay. Now keep in mind, my fiance is 24. Okay. So this wasn't from my personal experience, but this is from what I've seen across the board. There's actually a lot of benefits to dating a woman over 35, especially in Asia. And this applies to Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines. In Southeast Asia, a woman over 30, definitely 35, she's treated like men are when they get over 55. They're like pushed to the back of the shelf. Nobody wants to deal with them. Nobody wants to date them. From our Western perspective, we're looking at a 35-year-old woman who is gorgeous, beautiful, smart, working, all these things. And she feels like, well, guy, nobody wants me. Everybody wants the 20-year-olds, Now, here's the yin and yang of this whole situation. The ones that are over 35, many of them, they got pregnant when they were 18 and the guy took off. So they've been a single mother all this time, handling all the responsibility. They had to go get a job or make a business or whatever to feed their kids. So they're more mature. They've got their act together. They don't need a foreign to share his money. They've got their own money. It may not be a lot, but they got their pride that they pulled themselves up and they made a life for themselves. So the women over 35, they've got that going for them. They got more life experience. They've been handling kids. They've been handling responsibility. There's a lot of good reasons to date women over 35.
Wow.
Now, dating women in their 20s up until 30, well, okay, the most obvious benefit there is they're younger, they're full of energy, they're really hot, they're whatever. But I did a separate video on things to know before you start getting in a relationship with a younger woman. And the main gist of that was, okay, like in my case, my fiance is 24. And if you want to be with a younger woman, you need to go into it with the mindset it's on you to bring her up to speed. You need to be patient. With an older woman, she already knows how to do a lot of stuff in life, knows how to handle money and stay out of debt. With a younger woman, you really need to mentor her and be patient with her emotions, with her understanding, her lack of knowledge about the world. You need to be patient and bring her up to speed. You cannot, and this I've seen too many guys make this mistake, you cannot date a 20-year-old or 24 and expect her to act like a 40-year-old. And too many guys get frustrated. How come she doesn't know this? And how come
Yeah.
well, why did you pick a 24-year-old? If you don't have the patience for it, go date an older woman, you know? So as getting back to the question here, average age, it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting statistic. Even the Pope brought this up when he visited the Philippines. He said, and I'm quoting him, he said, "You people need to stop breeding like rabbits." Now, there are Filipinas in the Philippines. Let's say your criteria is you want to meet a Filipina who's 20 years old, who has no kids, and is not previously married. You know how hard that is? Because by the age 17, so many Filipinas already had their first baby, and the guy took off. You will find single mothers in such a high ratio that it caught the attention of the Pope. So finding a Filipina that's in the age bracket you want and meets your criteria is going to depend on whether or not you're open to being a stepdad. I did another video on that. Kudos to the guys who are willing to be a stepdad and take on a woman's kids as his own. That's a guy that has a very giving heart. That's a man that is willing to step in as a man where the other man took off and ran. You know, a real man stays there and provides. So it depends on what you're looking for.
Correct.
So if you're looking for a Filipina, 22 years old, who's never had kids, never been married, never dated a foreigner, you're going to have to be selective and turn down a lot of women. Because many of them, by the time they're 20, believe it or not, they've already got at least one kid, maybe two.
Correct. New York says, I guess for previously when you first went to the Philippines, how old was you then when you dated the one? Because I think you stated the woman was 32 at the time when you first went to the Philippines, and you was like 45, 46. So you pretty much wasn't living.
Yeah, I was 49 when I actually moved to the Philippines. Yeah.
Okay. How old was the first woman again?
She was 32 when we met. Yeah.
Okay. So your requirement for you isn't too young, like in their 20s, because with the experience of their maturity level.
Here's okay. I'll give you the statistics of reality and then what I was open to.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically, if I was to pick an average age of all the women I've dated in the Philippines, average that I've dated have usually been between 22 and 24, age 22, 24, because they're very open. They're very social. They're who you run into a lot when you're out at the grocery store and whatever. It's just a natural thing. And they are attracted to older guys. That is like impossible for some guys to understand. But it's because in their mind, they're thinking, well, I'm not attracted to older men, so why would a woman be attracted to older men? Women don't think like men. Their criteria is not looks. That's us. We're the ones that are visually oriented.
First. Yeah.
Women are looking at the concept of that man. That's where the attraction begins. Is he a protector? Is he a provider? Why do you think cops and firemen and attorneys and doctors have no problem dating? Just the fact that he's a cop or a doctor or whatever, he's already 1 foot in the door. He's a provider. He's a protector. And women Filipinas, they figured this out. They see a foreigner who's 55, 60, 70 years old. I saw this guy, his wife was a knockout. She was like 26 years old. I am not kidding. He walked in the mall with her on his arm. It was his wife, and he is dragging along an oxygen tank. He was 70 years old, and they were happy as birds,
Of course he was.
Yeah. And see, here's the thing. People immediately presume, oh, she's a gold digger. people got to get past this, because here's the thing: Filipinas figured it out. Is they want a man that's faithful. They want a man that provides. That's it. That's your
Yeah.
basic Filipina. That's what they want. So when they look, because I've asked them, especially the first couple of years I started, because I couldn't believe it. I was like, I never thought I'd be here dating this 24-year-old. And I would ask her point blank, so tell me, why is it you like being with me? You're beautiful. You could be dating any of these hunky Filipino muscle-bound guys at the college. They're gonna amount to something someday. I go, why don't you chase them? Why are you with me? Because I wanted an honest answer. Because
Yeah.
if there was an answer to that, I would just tell her, go find that guy. Go be with him. And you know what's the answer I got from different Filipinas, independently, who didn't know each other?
Mhm.
They said, well, the reason I want to be with you, she goes, for one, you're older. She goes, these younger guys, they're chicks boys. As soon as they get you pregnant, or as soon as they sleep with you 4 or 5 times, they take off to the next one. They don't want that. They want a faithful man. The other thing is they go, well, you're older, and you have more knowledge. I can learn things from you. So life experience.
Yes.
They value life experience. And so this is why when I hear guys who have never gone to the Philippines say things like, oh, she's just after your money. You've never been to the Philippines. You've never dated a Filipina. You need to do that before you open your mouth.
Correct.
Because they don't think like we do. They think with a whole different value system, So I think they were asking how old I am. I'm 59. So my fiance and I have a 35-year age gap between us.
There you go.
And here, I'll just kind of end with this, is you notice it when you first move to the Philippines. It's like, wow, I haven't dated a woman this young since I was 20. But you know what? When you get in a relationship, very quickly, how her age just kind of goes in the background, because you're dealing with a person. It's like, I'm in love with this person. It's not, you're constantly reminded what their age is, any different than their height. It's like, okay, so she's young. Okay, on to the next thing. We're in love with each other. We're in a relationship. And so the age gap may be shocking to people who have never seen it before, but it becomes your lifestyle when you're in Southeast Asia.
Fair enough. And I'm not going to pick apart the chat too much. It was one comment, because it still goes back to what you were saying earlier, just the mindset of the Filipinos. One stated, I guess she's there using the money. This person's a baby, and the baby comment, it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. When you mentioned, hey, by the age of 16 to 18, and when they get out of high school, they're already, their mindset like, hey, I'm looking for the husband to be, or the protector, provider. So these women from the beginning is already, hey, I need to do what I need to do to get this type of ideal man. I need to act a certain way. And I love all my women over here, but let's keep 100. It's a lot of women over here. It's not acting right, like on that mindset. Most of them say, hey, I'm focusing on my career and goals, which is great. Nobody's gonna never knock nobody getting their educations. Definitely nobody's gonna knock them for getting their career. But then once that's set aside, it's like, okay, now what? You got all the education, you got all the money. So what else you want? Then I've heard women say, it's about the vibes. I'm like, okay, so let's dive deeper in that. What does that mean? Because I don't know. I got vibes. I can juggle balls. I got a fast car. Like, where we going with that conversation? So I think a lot of just people in general need to peel back layers to understand what their wants versus what their needs is when it comes to a relationship. Now, if you're an iffy person, because I see this too, and it's on both sides, because I don't want to bash down the women, because it's men too. I'll see some would say, hey, momentary moments I work too much, but I'm alone. Okay, well, start working in parties a little bit. Okay, well, I'm home too much, but I don't get out more. Okay, well, start working on that too. So you got to find a balance when it comes to stuff
Yeah.
like that. So, but the age gaps again here in Western culture and society, so topsy turvy when it comes to rules and regulations in other countries. You know, we want it now, fast. When I want it, here it is. Men and
Mhm.
women is go go go. But when you go to other countries, say, hey, it's more serene, it's more peaceful. But remember, there's there dangers too there. But you just got to understand the rules and regulations that goes there. Understand the woman. So if you're getting for the men, if you're getting bombarded with a lot of women, and you know you haven't been getting that type of selection before, you got to think like, okay, let me pace myself, pump the brakes, one at a time, one at a
Mhm.
time. You know, don't get too cocky with that. Same thing in the
Yeah.
States. People get so much money. We know how Americans was doing here with the stimulus check. We know how people was doing with their
Yeah.
income tax. We know how they was doing with the I forgot what the other one was. The everybody's get like 20K, 30K, whatever they was doing then just to steal the government from that. So
Mhm.
when you get overwhelmed with something you're not accustomed to and definitely not used to, that's when you need to pump your brakes, think, and then
Mhm.
start moving forward in a regular, safe pace. So I think that's pretty much what he's saying for that one. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna leave with this, man, because I would love for you to tell this story. I'm not getting the context of it. I don't know if you remember the scooter story with your old Filipina
Oh yeah.
friend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and this again, this is where I tell people like, you know, there's always a good side and bad side in how you work out situations. I thought it was the best story ever. So we're gonna end up. So I'm gonna end up with this. If you don't mind telling that story, the scooter story, I thought it was the
Yeah.
most funniest thing ever. But it came down with a lesson and a price. So if you don't mind,
Oh
good
yeah.
sir.
Well, one of the lessons every expat has to learn is getting scammed, like by a real scammer, who's just out to roll you for money. And all the guys I've talked to, I've actually now the guy that, because everybody learns their lesson after a certain dollar threshold. Okay, for me it was like $50. I gave $50 to a Filipina because she told me this story that her nephew was in the hospital and needed pain medication. Well, then after I gave her the money, I found out pain medications only cost like $6 or $8. So she totally got me on that one. So after that happened, that was my $50 tuition price to learn about scamming in the Philippines. So after that, I told myself, okay, before any money goes out of my pocket from now on, I got to really be on my toes, because, there's just too much of this going on. So what happens is um, I was in Mactan, and the then fiance way back then, we had already broken up. And so there I am on Mactan, and now I'm being more social, and now I'm open to, hanging out with other Filipinas. I was walking home one day, and there was this Filipina, cooking up barbecue there on the side of the road. And so I stopped and we ate. I bought some barbecue. We got to talking and we became friends. Got her text number, and now her I never dated her, never nothing, never physical. She was like a really good buddy, and she was really cool. She was like a pirate girl. She was like everybody in town knew her because she was crazy. She would like make a potato gun and go right on her scooter out by the mall and shoot it. And it's loud. It sounds like a cannon. She would just shoot it just to scare people and then ride off. She was just crazy. I mean, all the characters that there were on Mactan, she knew them all. And I met them through her. So anyway, so she became a really good friend. And then, she was always busy looking for ways to make money. And, finally I said, well, I fired my maid that I had because she kept ruining all my shirts. I said, tell you what, I don't want to live in maid. How about you come over once a week, clean my place, do my laundry, do the dishes, sweep it all up. I'll give you $20. And she's like, yeah, that's a cool deal. And so we started doing that. Now she had this little, it wasn't even a mini bike. It was like really tiny. It was almost like a clown scooter. very tiny, and had like a 2-stroke engine. That's how small it was. And the wheels were only about maybe 12 inches, you know. I mean, it was just this goofy thing that she had. So we would, you know, she let me ride it around, and it was kind of fun. So I said, would you ever be willing to sell it? And she thought about it. She goes, yeah, you know. So I think I told her like I would pay her like $250, you know, buy it for $250, which was way overpriced. It was probably only worth $80. But I figured, she's a friend of mine, you know, I'll buy it. So I'm thinking, I don't want to get scammed. So I told her, well, tell you what, give me like 2 weeks. I'll take money out of the bank a little at a time. Every time I gave her money, I had a notepad, you know, a receipt saying, okay, gave her this much money for buying this motorcycle. She signed it and I kept it, you know, so I kept receipts for any money. And then finally I gave her the full amount for the bike. And she comes over for the last of the money. She gives me the keys. She leaves me with the bike. And I said, well, what about the pink slip, you know, the registration? And she goes, oh, I'll go get it. So she, you know, leaves, and she lived like not even 6 blocks down the street. And then she didn't come back. I thought, you know, she's unpredictable. You know, she's probably, I don't know, it's already 4 o'clock. She might be getting drunk. So I wait, and then I wait another day. And finally it's like 4 days go by. So I text her. I'm like, hey, when are you going to bring the pink slip, or you want me to stop by? I'll pick it up. No response. I'm thinking, well, what's going on here? You know, I mean, I've got the bike and she's got the money. The registration doesn't do her any good. Why would she not want to give it to me? So 2 weeks go by. I can't find her anywhere. So I finally go to her place. I go knocking on the door, and I said, hey, you know, you want to give me the pink slip? You know, didn't you get my text? You know? And she's like, go away. I said, yeah, I'll go away. Just give me the pink slip. And she goes, I changed my mind. I was like, about what? She goes, I don't want to sell you the bike. I'm like trying to process this. And I go, well, okay, I'll bring the bike back. Just give me my money back. She goes, no, I already spent it. Now, this is where just the illogic, you're going to run into this illogic, this total lack of reasoning in the Philippines so many times. So anyway, so she says, well, no, I don't have the money. I spent it. I said, well, if you can't give me my money back, then you can't have the bike back. She goes, okay. I said, so give me the pink slip. She's like, no. So after going in these circles, literally, I got really ticked off. Now, I'd only been living in the Philippines maybe 4 months at this point. And I'm getting pretty bent out of shape. So I'm telling her, I go, look, you either give me my money or you give me the pink slip, one of the two, or I'm going to the police. And so she goes, well, I'm going to call the police because you're harassing me. I said, I'm not harassing you. I'm asking you to do what you said you would do. So finally, I was like, okay, this is going nowhere. So I go, now the process, I find out that the process is you don't go straight to the police. You go to the barangay captain. Now, the barangay captain is elected in the neighborhood. Barangay is like their version of a neighborhood. The neighborhood elects one guy, and he's like a mediator. And you're supposed to go to him first. So I go to the barangay captain, tell him what happened. He says, okay, I know who you're talking about. I know her for years. I'll get her over here. We'll do a meeting. We'll try to mediate this out. I was like, okay. He goes, now, if we can't do a full mediation, I'll sign you a certificate that she didn't want to resolve this. You can take that to the police station, and then you can file what's called a blotter, or in other words, a police report. I'm like, okay, I'm good with that. So he says, I'll set the meeting for it was like the next week. So he's got my text number. So I get a text. He says, she doesn't want to appear. I said, okay, then I'll just go to the police. So then he texts me again the day after, and he says, okay, she's going to be there, but she's going to bring her dad with her. I was like, Okay. So I go ahead and I meet them there. And this is when it came out that I'm sitting there and her dad and her uncle. So she's got three, her, the dad, and the uncle. This is when it comes out that she's on probation for drug charges. And the dad is basically saying, if you go to the police, this is going to be a violation of her parole, and she's going to have to go back into jail till her court date. I said, well, then what do you want to do about this? I'm willing to drop all this. I just want my money or the pink slip. He goes, well, and he's speaking for her. Well, she took the pink slip to the pawn shop and borrowed a bunch of money against it, and now, can't pay the pawn guy back. And I said, okay, well, tell you what, I'll give you the motorbike back. Just give me my money back. So that's when he takes a long look at the uncle who's got the money, and they start counting out the money, and the barangay captain counts it. We all sign a little certificate that we're all good now. I gave her the bike back like I said I would. I got my money back. Now, the lesson I learned from all of this was, number one, don't do business like that with your friends. It gets messy. It gets weird. And after that, we weren't friends anymore. The other thing is, when I did buy a real motorbike, I went to a dealer. I didn't do second party. I didn't do private party. I went to the dealer. I gave them the money. They gave me the pink slip. Everything was, copacetic. So, lesson there, if you're going to buy a motorbike, do it with the dealer. You may want to buy it from an expat. You may want to buy it from a Filipino. You're taking chances there. Just go to the dealer, pay the money, and pay the extra amount, knowing that you have the satisfaction the deal's going to go good. The third thing is, just because you get along great with somebody, you don't know what their past is. I had no clue that she had drug charges or she was on parole. She never brought that up. So again, things you learn about people as you get to know them. So that was the whole incident and what I learned from that situation. And it's just taught me to be, and that was fortunately in my first 4 months in the Philippines. So I've learned to be very cautious about letting money leave my hands, and who you trust.
That part. I appreciate that story, man. That still gets me. Again, it's a learning lesson. So, again, please check my man out. REEKAY, Life Beyond the Seas. He got a lot of great conversations there, and again, a lot newsworthy too. So again, he was talking about anything, news articles. He would do a whole breakdown on it, just to get, again, back to the communication part, because that's a real big one. So you would see something in the article, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's great to come." No. He actually does a break. I'm telling use my blueprint, and then I was literally, I'll take that and I'll follow Paul. Like Paul did a whole walk through how his whole experiences on the plane, and it was crazy how he had like a 11 hours something difference, and then he had to go to the airport. He had to go take another test, and the way his sense of humor about it just chuckles me all the time. So, but yeah, REEKAY does a great deep dives on stuff like that. Even talk about his experience with the COVID. That's a great story. You could definitely check it out. He actually, pretty much documentized the whole situation where, he actually had, the C-19, his experiences, his held up from that time. I already know people was praying for you that moment. A lot of stuff that was a great adventure. I was living it through your eyes. So, and I know you was going through it. But yeah, definitely check out REEKAY out. He's, like I said, just the energy you bring is very welcoming. I pretty much, any other space, I hear people say one thing. I'm like, no, because I see you. I see the Filipino P, Paul, Gio. Y'all have a total opposite of what these guys are talking. They're not, quote unquote, boots on the ground. They're looking from the outside looking in. Unless you're actually serving, and there's pretty much a rare few that be on these platforms, unless you're actually served and understand what it means, you really just don't know. So be very careful when you're out dating people. Understand your intentions of dating people overseas, So again, I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of say, I am on Facebook. If you want to put my Facebook link on your description or
Of course,
whatever.
everything will be there.
I don't charge anymore. I haven't for like the last 2 years. But I will hear confidentially. It's just between me and whoever I'm talking to. If they have a situation, I just did this yesterday where they're in this situation. It's like, well, what are the best options? What things should I consider? I'll walk through that with someone. I can't always do a Skype call or anything, but what I'll do is a voice message back and forth, to kind of help just people work through their situation. Because I've talked to people that have gotten into some really messy emotional, financial, and legal situations that were, a real, like, it's like life or death kind of, this is really going to mess up their life if they don't handle it right.
Right.
And I've been doing that for years. So if you ever need somebody to walk through a problem like that, I'm available.
All right. Thank you. Again, guys, if you're new coming in, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, share, and definitely check out my boy REEKAY. So I catch you guys later.
Can I get a